I died. But what haunts me isn't death itself. It's what I heard from Jerusalem when the world went completely silent. It wasn't the sound of bombs. It wasn't the sound of gunfire. It was something else, something deeper, as if the soul of humanity itself was beginning to fracture. It wasn't a sound you hear with your ears. It was something only the soul can sense. It didn't roar like thunder. It whispered, like wind slipping through the cracks of memory. But it was sharp. It was cold. It pierced through me like a signal coming from the deepest realm of existence. So if you heard something like that, what would you do? Ignore it or stop and listen? Because when I heard it, I knew something was coming, and it wouldn't just happen in Jerusalem. It would reach every soul still breathing on this planet. My name is Madeline Carter. I'm 28 years old, a nurse from the state of Oregon. I had come to Tel Aviv to volunteer as a caregiver for victims in a conflict zone. I'm not someone drawn to end times thinking, and I've never been one to chase after visions or mystical ideas. But that day, when the explosion happened right in front of me, I didn't just see a flash of white light. I saw myself being pulled out of my own body, as if my soul had known it was coming long before it arrived. And then everything went still. Nobody, no gravity, no sense of time. But one thing became more present than ever before: that sound. A resonance not meant for the ears, but for the memory of the universe. It was calling me to a place, a sacred city. A city I had never visited in the physical sense, but somehow my soul had lived there long before I was called Madeline. Jerusalem. Not the Jerusalem of stone, of maps, of war, but a living being, breathing through the memories of humanity, aching through the unraveling of its spirit. I wasn't pulled toward it by physical force, but by a vibration that matched my essence. And the closer I came, the clearer the sound became. Not loud, not chaotic, but certain. Like the heartbeat of a life on the verge of death, pleading and warning at once. Have you ever heard something that didn't come from a speaker, but from the ground, from the air, from somewhere inside yourself? If you have, maybe you've heard it too. And if you haven't, the next part of this story may leave you unable to ignore it. Because it was in that place, where my soul had been drawn, that I saw the first thing that opened the entire vision. Something no one can turn away from. Not if they still consider themselves part of the human family. There was no door, no hallway, but I knew I had just crossed a boundary that could never be undone. The place where I now stood had no name. It wasn't heaven, it wasn't hell. It felt like the stillness between two breaths of the universe. Everything there was neither glowing nor dark. It did not move, yet it was unmistakably alive. There was no gravity, yet every thought fell with the weight of stone. And then I felt the presence. I didn't have to see it. I didn't have to call out. I simply knew I was no longer alone. Something was looking directly into me, without needing eyes. An intelligence surrounded me, not with questions, but with complete understanding. I wasn't afraid, but I couldn't hide either. I was stripped bare, like a soul with every label peeled away. My profession, my nationality, my history, my achievements, none of it mattered here. Do you want to know why you've been brought here? The question made no sound, but I heard it more clearly than anything I've ever heard in my life. It had no pitch, no voice, but it pierced straight through my awareness, as if it had always been there, waiting. I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure if I was ready for the answer. But then I nodded. Even without a body, I felt the gesture deep within me. Not because you are better than anyone, not because you are special, but because your soul once chose this. Before you entered that other world, you agreed to be a rememberer. A rememberer of what? I didn't even get the chance to form the question before the images began to appear, not as visual scenes, but as a field of feeling. A city, ancient and sacred, beautiful and full of contradiction, heavy and radiant, made of light yet fractured by darkness. It was Jerusalem, not the physical version, but its soul. I saw it breathing through memory, through spilled blood, through endless prayer. I saw each stone emitting a frequency. I saw walls that recorded the pain of every generation like a living library. I saw it radiating an energy that was spreading across the world, part cry for help, part warning. Jerusalem appeared before me not as a physical city, but as a living being, woven from layers of energy where light and darkness clashed in a silent battle. I wasn't standing over it, I was immersed in its vibrating atmosphere. At its center, a vortex of colorless energy began to form, like an eye opening in the middle of space, drawing in every neutral thought and compressing it into a single point on the verge of breaking. From that vortex, strands of black and white frequencies touched, clashed, then pulled apart. I understood this was not a physical war, it was a battle of frequencies. Negative thoughts, judgment, and apathy had formed. They clung to the air like thick, dark dust. But faith, compassion, and courage gave off light, subtle but powerful, quiet yet unwavering. I saw every soul not as human bodies, but as orbs of vibrating energy. Some leaned fully into the light, some slowly sank into the dark, but most stood still, neutral, unmoved, not choosing. And it was that refusal to choose that widened the fracture. Darkness wasn't winning, light simply wasn't being chosen. The realization overwhelmed me. Every soul carries the potential to influence the whole, and Jerusalem is the amplifier. Every small decision, every act that seems insignificant, becomes a vibration that's magnified 1,000 times when it converges here. I was shown a strange image, a clock with no hands, just a glowing circle pulsing with flashes of light. Each time a soul chose faith, the clock pulsed brighter. When a soul chose silence or judgment, the light flickered like an alarm. And then I understood. This wasn't a clock measuring time. It was measuring frequency, a collective consciousness monitor, and Jerusalem was the central point of calibration. No one had to explain it to me. I felt it with my entire being. I began to tremble, not from fear, but because my soul was beginning to recognize its purpose. I hadn't been brought here just to witness. I was here to remember that I had once made a vow. I, along with many others, had promised not to stay silent when the fracture began to appear. And now, that fracture was widening. The only question was, what would I choose? What would I do with this truth once I returned to the physical world? Jerusalem is the heart, but the heart is being divided. The voice rose within me again, and the soul of humanity now stands before a choice that can no longer be postponed. Light or silence, truth or convenience, awakening or complicity. I wanted to ask a question about what, but before I could, I felt myself moving again. Slowly, but with purpose, I was being drawn back toward the soul of the city. Like someone being called home to a place they'd never stepped foot in, yet somehow had always belonged to. And that was when I saw it for the first time. Not a vision, not a scene, a fracture, a single crack spreading outward from the center of the city of light. And what I saw next would forever change the way you see the world. I wasn't walking, I was drifting, but not like a cloud, more like a thought being pulled by a sacred gravity. The closer I drew to Jerusalem, the quieter everything became. But it wasn't the silence of peace, it was the silence before a storm breaks open. I felt the energy around me shift in tone, not colors that human eyes could see, but the temperature of the soul. Some places radiated warmth and light, others were cold as ice. Some vibrated like twisted strings, out of tune with the rest. And then I saw the fracture. A long tear splits the soul of the city in two, not divided by geography, but by consciousness. One side pulsed with presence, the other side echoed with absence. One side held light, the other darkness. But what chilled me to the core wasn't the contrast between the two. It was the space in between, the gray space. Not light, not dark, not choosing, just still. And I understood that was the most dangerous place of all. It wasn't the evil doing evil that was widening the crack. It was good to remain silent when the light was calling. I heard the sound again, clearer now, like a bell ringing from the shared soul of humanity. One by one, people were being called awake. But not everyone was listening. Some were busy arguing. Some were clinging to pride. Some were simply turning away, pretending not to see. Yet the call kept sounding, like a drumbeat not from a battlefield, but from within your being. And then I heard a number, not spoken aloud, but etched into the very field of awareness around me. 21.6. No year, no context, just a surge of knowing. Something will happen on June 21st. A shift, a rupture, a point of no return. I wanted to ask, who will cause it? But deep inside, I knew that wasn't the question. The real question was, who would stand still and allow it to happen? I saw souls drifting like mist. Each one is a glowing spark with its own tone. Some moved toward the light. Some wavered in uncertainty. Some fell into the widening fracture. But no one was being dragged. They tilted, they floated, they chose. Even in their silence, even in their stillness, their energy spoke. And I understood some of the most important choices in this world are made not by what we do, but by what we allow through our silence. In that moment, Jerusalem was no longer a city. It became an amplifier. Every frequency, whether born of love or fear, was magnified 1,000-fold. And because of that, it would become the point of ignition, not for a physical war, but for a great divide in human consciousness. A moment when every soul, no matter where they are on earth, would be called to choose the light or the silence. And then I saw a gate. It wasn't something you could open with your hands. It opened through readiness. And beyond that gate, a question waited for me. A question no one can escape, not if they hope to return. What do you choose when no one is forcing you to choose? I didn't step through that gate with my feet. I passed through it with readiness. Only when I accepted that I no longer knew who I was did the gate open. And when I crossed over, I didn't see heaven. I saw the truth. Not the truth of the world, but the truth of myself. There was nothing left to hide, no one left to blame, no image to hold on to, just the bare essence of who I truly was. And in the center of that stillness, I stood before a light, not blinding, but deep like an abyss. That light didn't ask me to kneel, it didn't demand repentance, but I wept, because in its presence I sought every moment I had chosen silence when I should have spoken. Every time I chose comfort over what was right. Every time I stayed quiet while the light within me cried out. The presence didn't condemn me. It asked only one question. No threat, no pressure, just a question no one can avoid. If you return, what will you choose when no one is forcing you to choose? I didn't understand it all right away. I tried to reach for a beautiful answer, something noble sounding, but the question wasn't asking for a promise. It was calling for the deepest agreement of the soul. And I stayed silent for a long time, because I knew if I lied, the light would know. No one can pretend to be awakened before the Creator. So I looked at my soul. It wasn't flawless. It had fractures, it had shadows. It held fear and small angers, and the shame of once doubting my worth. But I saw something else too. A small flame, not bright, not dazzling, but real. And I understood light doesn't need me to be perfect. It only asks that I be honest. I lifted my head, not because I was grave, but because I didn't want to hide anymore. And I said, if I return, I will not remain silent. I will tell the story, not so people will believe me, but so those who need to remember can awaken. The light didn't respond with words, but it entered me like warm water moving through every particle of my soul, not to cleanse, but to connect. And I saw it clearly. I had chosen this before. Before I was born, my soul had made a vow to remember, but I had forgotten, just like most of us. We come into this world carrying a silent promise, but it gets buried beneath the noise, the expectations, the fear, and the pressure to be reasonable. We lose ourselves in the roles we play and forget who we truly are. But there is always a way back. There is always a gate. There is always a choice, not just once in a lifetime, but in every moment we are still breathing. Then I heard the sound again, this time not from Jerusalem, but from within me. The sound of agreement, the sound of a choice made freely. And that's when I began to fall. But I wasn't falling. I was falling back into the physical world, back into the body, back in time, back into the mission. I woke up in the dimness of the emergency room, surrounded by the sterile smell of antiseptic, the steady rhythm of machines echoing my fragile heartbeat, and the astonished stares of the doctors. They told me I had been clinically dead for 3 minutes, but I didn't react, because I knew I had just lived more fully in those 3 minutes than I had in my entire life. My body felt heavy, my chest was tight, but my soul was light. Not because I was healed, but because I was no longer carrying the weight of silence. I remembered everything, more clearly than any dream. No gaps, no confusion, just a single message pulsing through every cell of my awareness. You agreed. Now you must remember. I didn't run to broadcast my story to the world. I didn't shout in the streets. I didn't post sensational prophecies on social media. I chose the way the light had chosen me, quietly, but truthfully. I began writing, first for myself, then for a small group of people, souls who had gone through deep experiences the world dismissed as hallucinations, people who had been called delusional or dreamers. And I realized I wasn't alone. I met many who had heard that same sound, from Jerusalem, from within, from the space between two fears. Some had forgotten, some had tried to deny it, some had stayed silent because no one would believe them. But when I spoke, they began to speak too, not to be believed, but so they wouldn't lose themselves. I left my job as a nurse, not because I stopped loving it, but because I finally understood. My role now was to heal through truth, not just medicine. I began speaking to small groups, no preaching, no fear tactics, just storytelling, and a single question. If you stood before the gate, what would you choose when no one was forcing you to choose? No two people had the same answer, but every person knew it was a question they could no longer run from. I saw that the world was still loud. The news still repeated itself. People were still angry. But I didn't feel hopeless, because I knew a different kind of wave was rising. Not a wave of destruction, but a wave of awakening. Souls are beginning to remember their ancient vows, not with banners, not with proclamations, but simply by choosing the light whenever the moment calls for it. In every conversation, in every decision, in every moment, someone dares not to remain silent. And now, that day draws near, June 21st. I don't know what will happen, but I'm not afraid, because I have chosen, and I have returned. Not to change the whole world, but to change myself, and to live that change truthfully enough for it to ripple outward. I am not a prophet. I am not a messenger of any religion. I'm simply someone who died, who saw, who remembered, and is now learning to live again in a way that no eye can see. But if you sit in silence long enough, you'll feel it stir within yourself. June 21st is approaching. I don't know what it will bring. War? A shaking? A doorway? An invisible test? I don't have answers, but I know something will be activated, not in the skies, but in the hearts of people. A marker, a window, a moment in time when the energy you choose will be amplified 1,000-fold through the field of Jerusalem. People ask, so what are we supposed to do? Should we go to Jerusalem, warn the world, pray louder? No. What you need to do isn't out there. It's in the moment. You choose light over blame, truth over comfort, awareness over avoidance. No one can choose for you. No one will force you, but you won't be able to say you weren't called. Jerusalem isn't a place you go to. It's something you become. It lives in you. It is your soul, the part that once made a sacred vow, that when the light called, you would not turn away. But every vow must be remembered, and that is why I'm telling this story. Not so you'll believe me, but so you'll remember yourself. I still walk every morning. I still drink my coffee. I still pay my bills, but I am not the same. I live as if every small action is a choice of energy, and I don't do it out of fear. I do it out of love. Because once you have stood in the light where no lie can hide, you cannot go back. You cannot pretend. You cannot choose convenience without feeling the ache of it deep in your soul. And if you are hearing this, I believe you are one of those who once made the vow. Maybe you forgot. Maybe you're starting to remember. But if something in your heart is stirring, if something in you whispers, "I've heard that sound before," then you are not alone. We are not alone, because Jerusalem is calling, not through gunfire, but through your soul. And the only question is, will you stay silent or will you answer?